I was able to do some shopping, one in a store in the Palm Beach County area, and another the next day at a little convention that is comic book focused. So I picked up some books, so I have a haul that I'd like to share. I have always heard about Concrete. I have never read Concrete. I used to hear about it in the 90s. And I never knew what a good starting point would be. So this is an edition called Concrete Land and Sea. It reprints and adds additional material to the first two issues of Concrete. And per Paul Chadwick's introduction, he fleshed out a story in the second issue. So I thought this is like a good primer. It's in really good shape. Art's great. I'm really gonna like this. I think I'm gonna like this a lot. So I'm looking forward to finally reading this and seeing what the buzz has been about for over 30 years. Next, a random issue, issue 24 of Akira. It's a little beat up. It's got a little staining here, or that's just aging. I've read the 6-volume trades, but I didn't realize that the line that was published by Epic was in color. And so it gives you an introduction to the events so far. And didn't realize, and I remember this scene, because this is when the U.S. military gets involved. And I didn't realize this was in color. So really looking forward to it. I loved this series. It's random, but it's kind of cool. $5 in the wild, which is pretty good because I never really see these books in the wild, at least in this area. So I thought that was a fun pickup. Apparently DC did
Ms. Tree.
for a while. So this is
Ms. Tree.
quarterly, and it has the main story. It's done by the series creators, Max Allen Collins, excuse me, and Terry Beatty. And it has a backup King Faraday story, because it's a DC story, with pencils by Carmine Infantino and inks by Frank McLaughlin. And I always liked Frank McLaughlin as an artist. He had a long run on Justice League. And as a kid, I grew up loving that stuff. So it's a nice little bit of nostalgia. The cover is by DeBerk. Forget his first name. It starts with R.A. He used to do comics in this time, and now he's an author and an illustrator, an award-winning author and illustrator. So this is like the book stuff he did, this painted cover, when he was still doing comics. And this story takes place, and I don't know anything about Ms. Tree. I just know that Ms. Tree has a big following, and I know they were published independently before this. But apparently Ms. Tree is very pregnant in this story. I like this art. I'm not really that familiar with Terry Beatty, and I should be. But in some ways, this almost reminds me a little bit of like
Jamie Hernandez style.
where it's clean, there's good acting, good facial expressions, and a lot is communicated within the panels. And you don't need a ton of words to communicate these close-ups. This looks really fascinating. So I'm looking forward to that. And as I said, the backup story is a King Faraday story. Pencils by Carmine Infantino, which is something that I'll always like. So I know that this, I don't know, I'm assuming this is done by the creators, that it ties in to the books that were done when it was on an independent publisher. But I'm just going to read it for what it is. It's a one-shot story. Okay. All right. The Pit. Now, I am not a New Universe fan. I know all about the New Universe and a lot of the, I guess, disdain that it got from the comics community. And the only reason I got this is because my son Chris was with me, and he told me, oh yeah, this is a story where they blow up Pittsburgh, and it's basically a big FU to Jim Shooter. And when I saw it was written by John Byrne, or co-written by John Byrne, I know John Byrne has a hatred for Jim Shooter that is deep and wide. So I figured for kicks it'd be funny, kind of just reading the story, seeing what they do. So the art is okay. It's by Sal Buscema, and inks by Stan Drake, excuse me. So it's okay. I mean, it's, it's solid. So I have no idea anything about the New Universe. The only thing I know about New Universe is that the Star Brand is a character that they always bring back into Marvel continuity, and then they always like make him look like an idiot. I guess they're still punishing for being based on Jim Shooter. Next up is issue 204 of I guess this is based on the world of Mobius's Airtight Garage. It's called Onyx Overlord. And the story is by Mobius, but it's written by RJM L'Officier, and the art is by Jerry Bingham. Now, Jerry Bingham is an artist that worked for Marvel for a lot of years during the 80s and early 90s, and whose work I always liked. That's the main story. And the interesting thing is that it features this character, and I thought, well, it's Blueberry. But they don't refer to him as Mike Blueberry. They refer to him as Mike Donovan. And for any of you super Blueberry nerds like me know, Mike Blueberry's real name was Mike Donovan, but because he was being hunted by the authorities, he changed it to Mike Blueberry, and that stuck. So this is a issue 2 of a 4-part series. These are pretty inexpensive. If I like this, I'll just pick up the rest. And then the second part is this sketchbook. It's Mobius' sketchbook. There's here, and then this little interlude story. So I like these. I'm going to see how it goes, but the coloring is really nice here. It's a pretty well made comic book, pretty nice looking. And none of this stuff is ever going to get reprinted for whatever reason. So if you can find these kind of things inexpensive and you're a Mobius fan, it's a good pickup, because you're never going to see these unless you find them in the wild or you get them on eBay. You're not going to get a trade of this, unfortunately. Okay. Now, this is just random issue number 4 of Rune. This was from the dollar bin. The first 6 issues of Rune were drawn by Barry Windsor Smith. I am a huge Barry Windsor Smith fan, as I've said many a time. So I'm like, okay, Barry Windsor Smith is doing a comic, and it's $1. I'm buying it. That kind of reminds me of that famous scene from Weapon X. I wonder if he's sampling himself. But I don't know. I'm in the middle of the story. I don't know what's going on. This is ads for Ultraverse, which pretty much didn't work. But as I said, I am a huge Barry Windsor Smith fan, and I'm really looking forward to just reading this and just enjoying the art. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, on the Barry Windsor Smith tip, I got this issue of Weapon X. Now, only the first 8 pages feature the Weapon X story. Now, the reason I picked this up is that, yes, I do have the trade in English. I also bought the trade in French. But Barry Windsor Smith has always complained that when they do the trades and the reprints, they're always very saturated in colors. And he always wanted to have Marvel print this story on some type of print, or just having the colors modified so that they would look like this, because when Barry Windsor Smith colored this, he colored this for newsprint, not for glossy paper. So it always, to him, seems too colorized. So he's been on record many a time saying that he doesn't like the coloring on the new books, and that he wishes Marvel would reprint this on some type of newsprint or newsprint-like paper so it would have the original look. So that's really why I picked it up. I have a few of these issues, as a matter of fact. I don't have the complete story, but I have a few of these issues. But this was inexpensive, in really good shape, and I wanted to see it. It has some other stories here. Sergeant Fury versus Dracula. Okay. Here, actually. Sergeant Fury vs. Dracula. Doug Murray, Tom Wilde, Joe Rubinstein. Not only familiar with Joe Rubinstein. An Iron Man story by Doug Murray and Ken Steacy. Ken Steacy, I believe, did the computer-generated or computer art graphic novel. Let's look at this. I always like Ken Steacy's art, and Ken Steacy is a person that will always modify their art, and it's never literally looks the same. So this will be kind of cool. And the last story is a Hulk story. Pencil is by Brian Stelfreeze. So let me pull that back here. So these are like little stories. You can tell this is very 90s influence just by what she's wearing. But if it's Barry Windsor Smith, I have a soft spot for books done by Barry Windsor Smith. Then I picked this up. This is a Richard Corbin one-shot special. This was from Pacific Comics in 1984. And the reason I picked it up is because these books, a lot of Richard Corbin's work has never been reprinted, and who knows if it'll ever be reprinted. That's why Dark Horse announcing a reprint of Murky World and then Den later on this year is big news, because the estate is finally open to getting his work reprinted. I don't know if things like this will ever see the light of day in a reprint. So I picked it up. Looks in great shape. And Corbin's a fascinating artist to look at. I just really enjoy his work as I've gotten older. And again, just finding this stuff in the wild isn't that easy, and in pretty good shape. And again, it probably won't ever be reprinted. So I'm enjoying this. And then what did I get? Okay, I got some trades. This is the return of Mr. X. Now, I've never read Mr. X. I'm familiar with some of the lore of Mr. X. I know that there's some issues with D. Motter maybe not paying the guys that worked on his book. But this series of stories were written by Gilbert Hernandez, Mario Hernandez, and Dean Motter. And the art is by
Jaime Hernandez.
So this is some early
Hernandez.
It's just really cool to see this kind of work before they rocketed to fame on Love and Rockets, no pun intended. Really good price for this. Really enjoy it. Always great to see Jaime Hernandez art. Looking forward to that. I also picked this up. This is a trade that collects the first 4 issues of the reboot of Magnus Robot Fighter that was published by Valiant in the early 90s. I always liked these first stories. The art is by Art Nichols, no pun intended again. Art Nichols did a pretty cool job with the art. The production is pretty good. And this kind of like reboots Magnus, and then he grows and changes the character. He's just not like... there's a lot of concepts as far as not just following orders, about how human beings have become lazy and too dependent on robots. There's a lot of issues here. There's AI-related issues, robots becoming sentient. And I thought, I liked these stories back in the day. And I know that the cartoonist kayfabe guys are always taking a big crap on Jim Shooter's Valiant. And yeah, some of those books were below standard, but some of those books were actually very good. This is a series that was good. The early Harbinger issues were also good. Archer and Armstrong, the early Solar Man, the Atoms, those were good stories. So I mean, I always wonder why the cartoonist kayfabe guys always take a giant crap on them, especially since they like love and worship Rob Liefeld. I mean, let's just be honest here. So this is the first 4 issues, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. Nice deal on this as well. Again, this is something that I just don't find this in the wild, and I don't find this in the wild. So when you find something in the wild, good price, something that you're interested in, you get it, because it's not going to be around tomorrow or the next day. And lastly, this is a beat-up reprint copy of the second printing of Love and Rockets 3. Now, it's beat up. The cover's kind of beat up. I know it's the reprint because the first edition, actually, I believe that the eye blasts are yellow, but it does have a different color scheme. But again, you got stories by Jaime, by Gilbert. You even got one story by Mario. And it's interesting seeing Jaime's work. Actually, this is, excuse me. Yeah, Hyman's work here because a little bit more like detailed here. It's a little bit different than the work that you get used to seeing in Love and Rockets. And it's interesting to seeing Beto's work here because Beto's work is the Beto style, but not fully yet. This is early, but this is that oversized comic. Very early work of theirs. I'm really looking forward to reading this. This is just so good. I mean, this is the third issue, and they're already just doing comics like this with just great storytelling. Can't say enough. And for $4, which is, and this is the back cover, and for $4, you can't beat it just for the reading experience, and you don't have to worry about it being a $200, $300 comic and like not even breathing on it or using your fingertips for the oils. You can just go through and read this and enjoy it without fear of like damaging a very expensive comic, which sometimes I like when you find like a beat up reader copy of a very expensive comic, because you can just read it and just enjoy it, and you're not like handling it like it's nuclear material. So that's it. I think I had a fun pickup. I think I found some really good books. Just really like some of the things I got. I am a bargain shopper, and I got these at pretty good deals. Didn't spend a lot. And some of these are random, and some of these are testers, but I think overall I'm going to like it. And that's it. And my rule of thumb is always, when you go into a bookstore or a comic book store, but a bookstore or that has like comics and they have shelves that are high, always go to the shelves that are the more out of way, that you got to get a ladder to get to, because that's usually where they have the good stuff. And always go through the bins, because, for instance, this I found in this area that had a bunch of science fiction magazines. This was just a comic that was randomly in there. So I think it was just hiding there because somebody misfound it or just put it back there. This and this I found getting on a ladder. And even though I'm 6'2", it was getting on a ladder and just having to reach over and being able to see these books. It was kind of way out of the way. And I saw some other books. I didn't pick them up, but they were pretty good. And sometimes it's just digging in that out of the way place. And then sometimes it's just coming in with no expectations, saying, okay, let's see what we have here. So anyway, I'm happy with this. If you're familiar with any of these comics, or you have any comments, or you have any input, I would love to hear it, because a lot of these comics I'm familiar with, some of them I am not at all. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and have a great day.